Let's kick it off. So hello, everyone. I'm Kathleen Bostick, and I'll be the moderator today. This is our second up close and personal webinar that we've done. We did our first one at Loc World 43. This is our second, and we've got another one coming up at Loc World 44. So today I've got the pleasure of hosting Natalie Zimmerman, who is a senior manager at localization at Precor, and Ceci Maldonado, who is not only the president of Women in Loc, but also director of strategic accounts at LATAMways. And so both of them are going to be talking a little bit about, how they got to where they are today, their journey, lessons learned, and some of the things that they see that they can give back on the future for you as you continue to move in your career. And then we'll follow it up with a Q&A at the end. And hopefully you'll get some good knowledge and some lessons learned. So with that, Natalie, I'm going to turn it over to you after let me just advance the slides here. I like to start off with a quote just because I feel like it kicks things off right. Being positive in a negative situation is not naive, it's leadership. How many of you had to do that in the past? All right, Natalie, if you want to introduce yourself and kick it off.
Yes, good morning, everyone, or good afternoon, wherever you're located. Interesting. Thank you for having me. So I was invited to speak a little bit about myself and tell my story of how I got into localization. It was very accidental. For starters, I now manage localization at Precor Incorporated. I've been working for the company for over 9 years now. And we just were bought out by the company Peloton. And I'm sure I'm going to be doing some work with this new company as well. So how it all began, made in France. I am from France, obviously, with my accent. And I finished a baccalaureate in project management over in France and didn't really know what I wanted to do. I did like languages. I love English. And so I decided maybe I'll travel to the United States to perfect my English, and via being an au pair, traveling, having fun. So I came to the United States, landed in beautiful Seattle area, Washington State. And it was a lot of fun. Met the boy next door, ended up marrying him, and he was like, hey, you should apply at Microsoft. And I was like, well, who's Microsoft? Obviously, I had no clue what Microsoft was. And at the time, they were hiring people who spoke multiple languages. So I interviewed with the Microsoft work team and landed in the Microsoft project team. And there began my localization story. I learned localization on the spot. I didn't know anything about localization. I came in, it was the beginning of December. My boss said, hey, here's a computer. This is how you turn on the monitor. Translate this. I'm going back to France for Christmas. And I remember it was pretty scary at first. I used to call my husband and say, I can't do this. He said, oh, yes, you can. You're at Microsoft, remember? And I spent the next 6+ years localizing 7 versions of Microsoft projects, learned a lot while working there, met a lot of great people from different countries, really liked the job. And about, 7 years later, Microsoft started sending everyone to Ireland to do localization. And I was offered a job there and I turned it down, obviously. I already had a first child. We had a house, and so I went on to, my next gig. Okay. So with that said, I have to say Microsoft really set up my track for, I would say, a lucky career in the world and the past in the world of localization. So I was lucky to work for many great companies. I went on after Microsoft to a company called World Data. It no longer exists. It was bought out by another company. And so basically from being at Microsoft and learning localization inside and out, because I localized everything that went into the packaging, I went to World Data and I worked with an agency. And I just managed all the localization and the languages, basically. And from World Data, I went to another company that was basically strictly a localization agency. So I was lucky to learn what it was like working on the agency side and working with clients. And so later on, I kind of switched on and off, went to Getty Images, worked for Space Labs Healthcare, did a gig at Cisco, and soon I landed at Precor, which is a great company. At Precor, I had the chance to create the department from nothing. There was never a localization position until I arrived there. And I created a centralized localization workflow. I was able to hire an agency of my choice, which basically I hired Argos Multilingual because I had the chance to work with them prior. And I really like the way they work, basically. And while at Precor belonged to a company called Hammer Sports. And I was able to also help the different brands under Hammer Sports like Salomon, Atomic, Arc'teryx, and teach them some of our localization concepts from Precor. And in between, I also went back to Microsoft, a little bit more fun there. So I have to say that, you know, I'd never meant to, you know, I never imagined that I would land in the US and stay here and have a pretty good track record in localization. So Kathleen, do you want to move to the next one? So with that said, I have to say, you know, I was able to travel with localization and attend different localization world conferences, some Taos conferences. And via Precor and Hammer Sports, I also attended different meetings in England, Italy, France. Again, I did a 2-day workshop with the brand Sunto, which is a brand for Hammer Sports. They needed a lot of help in their localization area. So I did that. And you can see all the great times I had and the different pictures I took. So lots of wonderful people, lots of different learnings on how different companies do localization. I was able to present in Localization World in Vancouver as well in 2014 with Argos Multilingual. And obviously, during this entire time, I did raise a family with my husband, who was lucky to have 3 beautiful girls. Also raised them to be very strong, told them that, you know, no one should let them, you know, don't let anyone take you down, basically. You need to follow your dreams and you need to know who you are and what you stand for. And all 3 girls graduated from Gonzaga University. 2 of them with a master, 1 of them with a bachelor. And we now have a little granddaughter who is our next generation of strong women already. So do you want to go to the next one, Kathleen?
I was just going to ask you, you've got your key takeaways. So go ahead and go through that. And then I was going to ask you a question.
Okay. So my key takeaways is, you know, you need to be bold and you need to pick up your battles and follow your passion. Obviously, during my 30-year career in the localization arena, I did have at time, you know, I had a lot of great experiences, at times struggle. At time, you know, I was turned on for a promotion or 2 because I remember one time, you know, I was turned on for a promotion because I was expecting my twins, and even though I should have had that promotion, you know, I was decided otherwise, but, you know, I didn't let that take me down. I continued and other great things happened instead. So I think at first when I started, I was obviously much younger. I was at times shy. I didn't know the way. It was a different country, but I learned. And again, you know, I do pick up my battles. I do put my foot down when I need to, but most of all, I do follow what I love doing. I do love localization, and I follow that passion all the way. Go ahead, Kathleen.
Okay. And I think you just answered my question. You know, what was the key to your success is, you know, following your passion, right? Yes. I mean, if you don't love what you're doing, everybody knows that. And I think that, it makes you most successful when you do what you love. So thank you, Natalie. We'll have some more questions at the end, but I wanted to move then over to Ceci. Ceci, President of Women in Loc. You want to turn your video on? There you go. I'm going to hand it over to you. And if you can give us a little bit of your background and lessons learned.
Sure. So hello, everyone. My name is Cecilia Maldonado, but most people call me Ceci. I'm super excited to join all of you in this second edition of Up Close and Personal, brought to you by Law World. Kathleen, I'm very grateful for the invitation, for being able to share my story and increase the visibility of women in localization. Hopefully we'll inspire a few people with the lessons learned. And I'd like to share, or to start by sharing how it all started. So you can see in this slide, first slide, how my life changed in only 1 year, from being one of the top students in my class to being a cheerleader in a small town in upstate New York. So there's a reason for this. Most kids in high school here in Argentina, all they want to do is finish high school and go to the south of Argentina, which is basically a non-stop party time. All I wanted to do at 17 was to get out of my city. And Rotary International provided these youth exchanges that were open to students 15 to 19, and for them to learn a new language, discover another culture, and truly become global citizens of the world. And this is what I did. One of my dad's friends was a Rotary Club member, and I asked him to sponsor me so that I could apply for the program. I did. I got my scholarship, and I landed in Cortland, New York at the age of 17. This experience, I believe, was what played a key role in my development as a leader, and apart from changing my life completely. It totally took me outside of my comfort zone, and as I had to adapt to 4 different families in 1 year, 4 different family dynamics, endure different life conditions, realities, and traditions that were very different from home. And since I had obviously committed to an entire year in this small town in upstate New York. As an exchange student, I had to talk about my culture, talk about Argentina, and do all these presentations in front of all the Rotarians at only 17 and with no experience, because I was basically supposed to show that I was worth the scholarship that they had given me. In my next slide, you can see that once I got back home, I went to university for a 5-year program because I wanted to be an English translator. And when I graduated at the age of 23, there was no industry in Argentina, no possibilities for translators. But I did want to work as a translator, and I was determined to explore my options. My dream had always been to be an interpreter for the UN, but after giving it a try at local events such as marriages, conferences, and meetings, I decided it was too stressful for me. So I decided to move on and continue to explore options with translation. We started with 2 of my friends in university. We started our first business at the age of 24. And we made money by teaching English as a second language. We started working at different companies, teaching English to CEOs, managers, and stuff like that. And so we landed a huge deal with an airline where we would train the entire staff at their different locations, pilots, flight attendants. We would travel back and forth from Buenos Aires for meetings, and we were only 24, 25 years old. So we really wanted, and we were hungry for business opportunities. But still, the opportunities weren't enough. So we started looking outside of Argentina, and that's how we discovered the first international conference, the ATA, where we participated in the year 2000, and it was mind-blowing. The opportunities were so many that we started working with American companies back in the year 2000. But we needed to share this with our local community, because if we wanted to become a serious business and grow, we also needed to train people locally. So that's how we organized our first translation and interpretation conference here at a bookstore where we prepare the coffee and the things that we had to eat at the coffee breaks. But that became a huge success, and we organized 7 international conferences after that, 30 training events, and not only in Argentina, but also in Brazil, Dublin, Mexico, and Silicon Valley. The next slide now, please. The community that we were building by organizing these events would grow as our company grew. As we traveled more and more, we met amazing professionals along the way that we would invite and bring to Argentina to speak and share their knowledge. We created different brands such as the Vendor Management Seminar, the Project Management Seminar, Think Latin America, and of course the Language and Technology Conference. Building your own community or finding your community for us was key. As we grew, our network grew. We detected a need for a local association of translation, since the ones that existed here did not represent our businesses. And that's how Translated in Argentina, one of the nonprofit organization that I co-founded, and the first nonprofit association that was started in Argentina was born. Translated in Argentina is a nonprofit association of language and industry professionals, whose mission basically is to bring, to position Argentina and to make it the go-to source for Spanish language services. I have friends in the industry I've met 20 years ago, and there's some amazing professionals I doubt I would have met if I hadn't been involved in these communities, and if I hadn't been an active supporter and participant of the different industry associations such as GALA, the Association of Language Companies, Translated in Argentina, and now Women in Localization. Speaking of community, I became involved with Women in Localization 5 years ago when one of my long industry friends invited me to participate in their chapters program under the leadership of Anna Schlegel at the time. I did get involved more and more. And today I am the president of this amazing organization. Women in Localization is a certified nonprofit organization whose mission is to foster a global community for the advancement of women and the localization industry through actions such as networking, education, career advancement, and of course, the recognition of women's accomplishments. Despite its name, Women in Localization is an inclusive organization that welcomes everyone in the globalization, translation, localization, interpretation industries who support our mission. Of course, being a member of Women in Localization has very many benefits, such as becoming a volunteer with any of our programs so as to develop your leadership skills. That's what we're all about. Blogs, newsletters, exclusive content, special events, and much more. Being part of a community and having amazing people support me along the way is what has helped me be in the position I am in today. I couldn't have done it without the support of people. So that's why the lesson learned here is surround yourself with people who lift you up. I started my first company with friends. I started my second company with key people I worked with at the time. One of them is one of my business partners now. And my third company is the result of a merger with another local company. And I can call these 3 ladies my now partners, my friends, people I trust, and who are key in the running of the everyday operations of LATAM Ways. The next slide is to show you who I am. I wanted to leave this to the end because this is the result of all the career path. I'm one of the owners, and I work as the Director of Strategic Accounts at LATAM Ways, one of the top 10 translation companies in Argentina, as stated by NIMS's report. LATAM Ways is an ISO certified and women-owned certified company, and also a very active supporter of the main industry associations. And I want to leave you with, for me, one of the most important messages, and this beautiful face of mine in this slide, which you can read. This is an awesome word I learned, but I will avoid reading it out loud. You can do it yourselves. But the message is important. Knowing who you are and being confident immediately pulls you ahead and helps you take the lead. So that's all for me for now, and I look forward to the questions.
Thank you, all right, there you go. Hey, thank you, Ceci. That was good. I think this slide says it all. This is a side of you I didn't know. So definitely got my attention. Definitely. Natalie, do you want to come back on video so I can ask a few questions?
There you
go. We can open it up to the audience. So thank you both for giving us a bit of the background on yourselves and your career path. I guess one question I have for both of you is, what advice would you give your younger self today? Ceci, you want to start with that?
Sure. Well, I did take a lot of risks when I was very young. I didn't really care about what people thought or anything. I considered myself a professional at 23. So I would, what I would just say is prepare yourself. I believe in preparation today. When you show up ready for any situation, it turns out a lot better. So I was very informal at the time. I became more formal with age. So preparation is important, and I wouldn't underestimate that. Being natural and being yourself is great, but a little preparation adds to it and improves results for sure.
I totally agree. Prepare and have a plan. You got to have a plan.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
Natalie, how about you? You have anything to add there?
I think going back, it's maybe it's not being shy, but don't let people push you around. It's kind of prepare, create boundaries from the get-go, basically, and tell them this is your space, this is my space, and have some professionalism, boundaries, basically, because I felt at times there was disrespect in the workplace, and because I was much younger, I just didn't know how to deal with it. And if I have to go back, these are things I would change, basically.
Sure. Well, and I think, in the days that we all started in our careers, we didn't have mentors or coaches.
Exactly.
And we didn't have other women to look up to and learn from. And the advantage of the next generation, I look at my daughters, you have daughters and sons, that we now have people that can help us along the way, coach us, mentor us, and we can learn lessons through them versus making mistakes ourselves. Right. So
for sure.
If there's any questions from the audience, feel free to unmute yourself and come on camera and ask a question. Otherwise, I've got a few more that I'll ask while we're going here. So Ceci, what about daily habits of a successful leader? I think that you are both leaders in your companies, and there's things that you have to do to manage your teams. So, what do you think are the most important things that make you successful?
Again, I think I learned that with time by sort of changing the strategy, let's say. But something that has always been the same for me, I've always challenged myself to do better, improve, learn new things. So be constantly not being afraid of change, being constantly in the move and challenging myself has always been key. Using every experience that I have to be better, and accept when you're wrong and change on the spot, especially when you're working with so many different people. I have 3 partners today, and I work in different organizations where I work with a lot of people. So if you think that you're always right, and that you're always the best ever in the room, then it's definitely not a very successful way to go. So I think that leading by example, trying to be very humble in that path, and giving people the opportunity to show what they can do, and trusting people, right, is also very, very important. And not being scared to change circumstances, always asking the tough questions, of course, and giving back. For me, that's another very important one. So that's why I've always been involved in different associations. I think that giving back puts you in a place of leadership that can't be compared to anything else.
So I think we might have a question from the audience, but I can't really see. Is there anyone that has a question?
Do you want to help? Do you want me to help and see if I
Yeah,
can
see if anybody has a question.
I don't see anything in the chat. So
okay, there's nothing in the chat. Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure there was nothing. Well, so Ceci, I think while we have you, you're the newest woman, the newest president of Women in Loc, and you're the first non-founder that's president. So can you tell us a little bit about how you got to be president, and what your goals and objectives are for this year?
I still cannot believe that. Because I'm not even in Silicon Valley. So I'm all the way down in Argentina. So this is the first time someone from, outside of the corporate world and non-Silicon Valley becomes president. I was invited to the board some years ago and started working with the most challenging program the organization has, that is the Chapters program. The Chapters program is a program that organizes all the different chapters that we open around the world, and then we have to manage them. So today we have 28 chapters around the world and 200 volunteers for that program alone. So it's a huge challenge. It's a lot of work, but for me, it was an awesome learning experience, and it helped me develop different skills around managing all these people and objectives while being aligned to the mission of the organization. And I guess that hard work took me here, right? Because I had the board voting me in, invited me to be part of the board. That's how I started working as a board sponsor for the Chapters program. And then I was suggested as the vice president and voted again president last year. So that's how I got here. As far as your dogs, as far as the objectives for the organization, it's a special year because we have to work on the restructuring of the entire structure. We've gotten too big too fast. So there's a lot of legal, compliance, financial compliance issues that we have to look at. There's a lot of reorganization that we have to look at so that we can become a more scalable organization in the long term. But that's the mission. That's the main objective of this year. We don't want to stop growth, but we really need to know that we are growing on stable grounds, let's say. So that's what we're working on this year.
And how many members do we have now in Women in Loc?
More than 15,000. But yeah, the thing is that in this process of restructuring, people think that they are members because they belong to the LinkedIn page, for example, or they follow us on social media. But in order to be considered an official member of Women in Localization, they have to sign up through the website. So it's womeninlocalization.com sign up, and they have to complete the form. That's how we are now tracking the official membership. And this has happened over the past 2-3 years, so it's pretty new. And we're formalizing processes, and in every organization that changes from being totally ad hoc and informal to formal, there's a process there, and there's some time to make all these things happen. So yeah.
Great, thanks. I think a lot of people are joining, and a lot of people are learning more and more about Women in Loc as we go, as it gets a higher profile. So I appreciate that. So we're on the bottom of the hour, and we want to close out. Natalie, do you have any final learnings that you'd like to pass along?
I mean, my advice to everyone doing localization is, follow your dreams and follow that passion. If you really love it, do it and make a difference.
Ceci, how about you?
I was thinking about some of the things that we discussed during the conversations of this session, and I remember the first session of Up Close and Personal, and I think that there's a lot of women out there. Well, women. I represent a women's organization. Sorry, there's a lot of people out there who really want things to happen, but many times they're scared. And change, it can take some time to produce change, but once it happens, it takes a little bit to accommodate, and then everything is a lot better. Like if you think failures, for example, and I'm not a person that considers failure as a bad thing, right? But it took me a while, for example, to dissolve my second company. Even though we weren't having the best of relationships, this is just like a marriage. So I had a business partner, we weren't getting along, there were some issues there, and we knew that this had to, something had to happen. And once we could make it happen, everything that came afterward was just great, was even better. My new company grew like crazy. The visibility that I had was always good. So I think that you don't have to be scared of change, but instead embrace it, because you never know what good comes out of that. And I'm sure it's always better. For me, it's always better.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, well, and some of the key takeaways that you both have said still lead me back to the last session of Up Close and Personal with Paulette, where you both have, be bold. I still remember that. I think that's a really good one. I mean, you can't start 3 companies without being bold. Don't be afraid to reinvent yourself, because you do change over time. And one that neither one of you brought up, but I still think it's a great takeaway, is if your boss doesn't think you're the best thing since sliced bread, go find a new boss, right? You need to be in sync with your leader. So with that, I think we're at the bottom of the hour here. Thanks everyone for joining us. We appreciate it. And we look forward to seeing everyone at the next Up Close and Personal at Loc World 44 that takes place in October. Oh, and you know what? There may be a question I might have missed, and I apologize if I did. It's very hard to read the chat, but
I'm not seeing any questions in the chat.
Okay, good.
No.
All right. Thanks,
I'm just
everyone.
saying, I'm reading. Thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you for the invite.
All right. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you.